Hi crafty friends, it's Taylor here from Tailored Expressions, and I'm excited to be joining you for World Card Making Day. When the team at SCT asked me to come up with my favorite technique, this was one of the first ones that came to mind. I know we all, as card makers, have lots of cardstock scraps, so I wanted to show you one of my favorite ways to use up my cardstock scraps. So here I have a bunch of different sizes and shapes and colors of scraps that I pulled from my scrap box. One of my biggest pieces of advice for using your scraps is to sit down with intention to use them. So I do this when my scrap box gets a little bit out of hand, and I sit down with these dies. And these are called Easy Strips dies. I have the 1/4, 1/2, and 1/8 inch, and they come in both the plain and then also in the stitched version. So I sit down with these and my file folders of scraps, and when they get a little bit overrun, I take some of my scrap pieces and I cut them into strips. And I use whatever size I have. So if my cardstock does not quite fit the whole die, that's okay. I still use it and I cut the strip out of whatever size cardstock I have. So I end up with lots of pieces that I can use to create beautiful backgrounds. And once these backgrounds are created, they are the backdrop for your card project. And we've also created something else at Tailored Expressions, making it really easy to create fun patterns with these strips. These are our Easy Strips maps, and they are printed on a 20-pound text weight cardstock, so a very lightweight cardstock. And then we have our A2 size sticky sheets that fit over the top. So this is going to help you build patterns like you see here, really easily, really quickly, without all the guesswork and the measuring and making sure that the pattern that you have in mind is actually going to look good when you're finished with it. So those Easy Strips maps really take the guesswork out of the creation process for you. And you still get to pick the fun colors and do lots of different color combinations, whether you like to do a masculine card or maybe you have a rainbow in mind, which is usually what I have in mind. I love making rainbow cards. So here you can see I'm sending that die through. It is 7.5 inches long. So as I mentioned, I don't always cut the entire piece. If I have a strip long enough, then I'll cut the entire die. But if I don't, I will just cut partial strips because you don't always need a full strip in order to create the background. And that just helps me use up more of my scraps, and then I can store whatever I don't use for later and continue to come up with some really fun patterns. So this first color that I cut was from the 1/4 inch Easy Strips, and I used guava cardstock. I'm now putting fruit punch cardstock with the same die into my die cut machine. And you will see that once it's finished, I get 8 of the same size strips from that one die cut. So they share cut lines on the die so that you can easily pull out the pieces, and then you have lots of strips to use. I didn't want to spend too much time die cutting during the video, so I did do some die cutting off screen, and now we're going to start piecing together a pattern. Here I have one of our Easy Strips maps along with one of our sticky sheets. I peeled the backing paper off of the sticky sheet and placed the top corner over the top of the Easy Strips map. And then I can easily pull that down and remove the backing paper to make sure that I don't get any of the air bubbles in between while I am pressing that sticky sheet to the paper. So now you can see the map and exactly where you want to build your cardstock pieces. So I'm going in rainbow order here, and I'm just following the directions on the map. These are all 1/4 inch Easy Strips. I started at the top with guava, then I have fruit punch, next up is sweet potato pie and pineapple, then I have lime zest, and then this is confetti cake, and the next color will be dried fig. So that's my rainbow, and it's important as you're doing these to make sure that you're pressing the strip into the previous strip. So kind of pushing it up into the strip that you previously adhered, just to make sure you're getting a perfect connection between the pieces and not leaving any white space between them. And that sticky sheet really is the game changer for these because it allows you to build the patterns quickly without placing adhesive on the back of every single piece of strip that you are using. So this fun pattern is a tough one to create without the help of the map. This is all measured out. Everything is perfectly placed and centered on your A2 piece of cardstock. So really all you have to do is follow the map and decide your colors. Obviously, I've gone with a rainbow color combination here, but I can imagine this being fun in lots of different colors. And of course, when you're finished or before you're finished, you might want to cut off some of those edges. I had to stop in the middle of my pattern and cut off some of the pieces so that I could use the excess to continue building my pattern. So I just trimmed those off the top, and then I have additional pieces that I can use to continue building the pattern all the way down the sheet. Those smaller pieces definitely come in handy, which is why I said at the beginning that I like to cut strips from all of my scrap sizes and not just my large pieces. I need a few extra pieces to finish off the bottom of this pattern, so I'm using my scissors to trim the sides once again, and I can use those extra pieces to finish the pattern in the bottom corners of this piece. Now would be a good time to tell you all the reasoning behind choosing a text weight paper for these maps. And as you all know, we have 100-pound premium cardstock. So when you're building a pattern with premium 100-pound cardstock, if you're putting that on top of a piece of paper that's also thick, then it's harder to do things with this pattern once you're finished. A lot of times I like to die cut pieces from this. You can often get a 2-for-1 card when you die cut something from the center and use that die cut piece on a separate project. So the thin paper, when you've built your thicker cardstock on top of the thinner text weight paper, that allows you the opportunity to do die cutting of the paper without having to have those thicker dies that cut through many layers or running it through your machine many times to get it to cut. So that's the reasoning behind printing these on the thinner weight paper. I'm going to show you how I built another pattern. This one is a little bit different. It has a 1/8 inch strip in between all of the 1/2 inch strips. So this is going to allow me to use the other two versions of easy strips, the 1/8 and the 1/2. We also, on the patterns where it makes sense to build in a certain order, we have included a number printed on the map. So I'm starting with the number 1. And then I'm going to take a white stitched 1/8 inch strip, and all of my 1/8 inch pieces are going to be white. And then the rest of them will go together in a bit of a rainbow pattern. So starting with that first strip down the center is going to give us something to kind of butt our other pieces up against to make sure that everything stays straight. So we'll come in here with, this would be number 4, piece number 4. I need a little bit longer strip to make sure I get all the way across that diagonal. And then that builds the pattern in the opposite direction. So everything should be straight as long as we get these first 6 pieces onto the sticky sheet perfectly straight. Again, these are 1/8 inch stitched strips and 1/2 inch regular strips. I've cut the white strips from our sugar cube cardstock, and the green color that I'm using here is lime zest cardstock. So now I'm going to take additional 1/2 inch and 1/8 inch strips to continue building this pattern. I'm using the same color combination that I used in the first card, so same colors of cardstock to build this fun rainbow striped pattern. I love using a thin white stripe to separate the colors because it really allows your eye to focus on the pattern of the colors and not the busyness with the thin and the thick in multiple different colors. Another tip with these would be to use a long-handled scissors when you're cutting the strips from the back. Mine is a little bit short, so I'm not getting the help of that long blade to cut those multiple pieces at one time. But I've also found that a guillotine cutter works really well for trimming the strips off of the sides before you continue building your pattern. I did lay this out a little bit ahead of time just to make sure that the pattern was coming together in the color combination that I wanted. Of course, it is always an option and very simple to just copy a pattern that someone else has created. So if you like this pattern and you're feeling inspired, go ahead and just use the same color combination in the same spots that I am sharing. I know you're seeing this sped up and not in real time, so I did time myself in creating this pattern and just wanted to pass along that if you're doing a pattern like this one that has a few more strips, then it took me about 12 minutes to build this pattern. Which altogether is really pretty fast. So you could have a background for a card in a short amount of time and pop your sentiment over the top, and you have a fabulous, colorful card to send on to a friend or family member. So we're coming to the end of this pattern, a couple more colors, a couple more white strips in between to separate, and then I can take my scissors and trim off the outer edge. Looks like I was a little short, so I had to snip a couple off to get those extra pieces covered at the bottom. And once we're done building this, I'm going to show you a few ways that you can then use these background patterns. I did mention that you could die cut from them if you wanted to use a shape die to cut part of the pattern out and then even use that separate shape on a different card. But there are some other fun ways that you can use these background patterns once you've created them. I have a Versamark pad with our diamond embossing powder. So our diamond embossing powder is clear and it has glitter in it. So it basically can go over the top of any color and make it sparkle. So I'm taking my Versamark ink pad and I'm pressing it over the entire background of this design. Then I'm going to take the powder and pour it over the top. So once I have my piece completely covered in Versamark, just pour the diamond embossing powder on top of your patterned piece, and we'll go ahead and heat that to make the entire pattern that we created glittery and sparkly. So this is another super easy and fun way to add texture and just a fun sparkly element to any pattern. I'm going to take my heat tool then and go ahead and heat this up. You want to make sure you are moving fast, but also keeping the heat in place long enough to get that embossing powder to set. It's really easy to see it turn because it turns from that dusty white shade into the beautiful, sparkly, shiny glitter. And it does take a little bit to get the entire piece all embossed. I did not use my mini mitts on this, but this would have been a perfect opportunity to use our Tailored Expressions mini mitts. They protect your fingers. They're little silicone finger protectors so that you don't burn your fingers while you're embossing pieces like this, where you're holding very close to the heat tool. But I am going to end up shifting here and holding on the other end of the cardstock so that I can get this last little bit on the edge embossed. And I know it's hard to catch on camera. You can't see all that sparkle, but it just kind of looks shiny on screen. But let me tell you, in person, it is a beautiful sparkle. And it also darkens your cardstock a little bit, so you can see it up against the other pattern up in the top corner. So now my cardstock is slightly darker and also very glittery. So that is a fun way to kind of create something a little bit different and just spice it up a little bit. So I'm going to use my A2 stacklet in order to cut out the portion of this piece that I want to layer on my card base. The size of the Easy Strips maps is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So if you want a layer that's slightly smaller than that, then you can use one of the A2 layer dies to cut that down. I'm going to do the same die and cut out the pattern from the other piece that we created and just make sure that I have 2 panels that will layer nicely onto my A2 card bases. Now, if I'm not feeling like creating full cards at the time, I will set these panels aside. I have a whole tub full of panels that I've built from scrap, and when I'm looking to make a quick card, it's fun to just peruse through that tub of created panels and find one that fits the occasion. But for the sake of World Card Making Day, I couldn't finish my video without actually making a card, so we're going to continue with the sentiments. I have our open scallop circle here, and it's actually a 2-piece die set. I want to cut out the center, so I'm including that second piece nested inside the outer scalloped circle, and I'm sending that through my die cut machine. I actually cut out, I think, 2 or 3 of these to finish the cards that I'll be making today. So just poke out those extra little pieces, and that portion in the center, the open circle, is going to be where we place the sentiment. I wanted to add another shimmery element to these projects, so I'll be using the Foilet Boho Hellos. These are pre-printed toner panels, and they are foilable with a mink or laminator. So I'm taking the coordinating dies for this, and I'll be using those dies to cut out the 2 sentiments that I'll be using on the cards today. Sometimes I will die cut before foiling, and sometimes I'll foil first and then die cut. So it's really more a personal preference. And a lot of times if I'm, again, not feeling in the mood of creating a full card, but I just want to accomplish something that my future self will thank me for, I will go ahead and die cut these foilable sentiments so that they are ready to go and I can just choose my foil when I am creating a card. And that always saves a step. I can also, once they're die cut, I can see and place them where I would like them on my card to see if they fit in the open space that I have while I'm creating. So having some of those die cut sentiments just already saved and off to the side saves me time and stress as I am finishing my project with a sentiment. I'm heating up my mini mink to a 3, and I've grabbed some of our Silver Stars and Sparkle TE Fun Foil. This is something new at Tailored Expressions. We just released our own brand of foil that works with toner. So I'm taking my clear transfer folder and I have our TE Foil Magic Shim. It is made of an epoxy laminate that really conducts the heat of your machine through to your cardstock and your foil. So instead of cardstock shim that kind of absorbs the heat before it gets to your project, this really conducts the heat and allows you to get that really consistent foiled image every single time. It also provides that little bit of extra added pressure that is nice when you are foiling to get the perfect consistent application of the foil. So I'm just waiting for that machine to heat up here. It's still blinking red, so hopefully it turns green here in just a second and we can send this folder through. I do always send the folder through with the fold first, so I keep that unfolded edge to the outside and put the folded edge in first. So this will run through the machine, and this is in real time, so you're getting an idea of just how fast or slow the mink moves. As it comes out the other side, I can take that piece out and my sentiments will be perfectly foiled. So I'm going to shut that machine off because we don't need to use it again for these 2 projects. I have my 2 sentiments ready to go. I do like to let it cool just a little bit, so let that foil cool down to the touch before you peel the paper off. And you can see those beautifully foiled sentiments, so pretty, sparkly, shiny, and fun to include on your projects. They just really step it up that extra notch and make it just really fun for the recipient to get. So I have a couple of circles that I have cut out of vellum, and I'm going to put those behind the scalloped circles that are die cut from our white sugar cube cardstock. I'm using my precision glue press from My Sweet Petunia to apply the liquid glue around the outside of that scallop shape, and then I'll press the vellum into place. I truly love my glue press. It is super easy to squeeze that handle and get a very fine line of glue, which in card making we use a lot of small intricate pieces, so it comes in really handy. And I love that I don't ever have to cap my glue bottle. It is just super easy to stick it back into the holder, and there's a little piece of silicone at the bottom so that the cap of your fine tip presses up against the silicone and keeps the air from getting into the tip and clogging your glue. So it has been just a really great tool that is newer to the market and something that has really helped me a lot. Okay, so here are those 2 sentiments. I placed them over the top of the vellum, and that vellum is going to allow us to see the pattern that we created in the background. It diffuses some of the color from the pattern, so it allows the sentiment to stand out, but you still get to see that there is a pattern behind there. I'm taking some of our foam squares and I'm going to cut those apart with the scissors. I just leave them attached to the foam roll and I can cut them into whatever size I need. So those are going to go behind the sentiment, and by popping this up, it further diffuses the color behind the vellum and allows that sentiment to be the star of the show in the center of your card. I'm going to do this for both of the sentiments, and then we'll get those adhered down to the pattern and attached to our card bases so we have a couple of fun cards for just about any occasion. I used the Oh Happy Day, which would be perfect for a birthday card, and the Hi There, of course, you can brighten anyone's day with that card at any time. So I'm removing the backing paper off of those foam tape pieces, and then we'll go ahead and place this down onto our panel. With the V of the pattern kind of pointing towards the bottom, I decided to place the sentiment in the bottom third of that panel. And then we'll remove the backing paper from the second sentiment, and I'll place that one centered on the other panel that we created. So these were super quick and easy, and the only step left is to decide on a card base color and get those adhered down. I decided white for the card base, so I'm just going to use our Sugar Cube cardstock to match that sentiment panel, and I'm using one of my favorite adhesives. These are the Tailored Expressions 1x3 thin foam strips. We have them in two thicknesses. The thin is 1/32 inch thick, and then the regular is 1/16 inch thick. So the 1/16 is more of a standard dimension for foam tape, and the 1/32 is really great because it just gives you that extra bit of dimension without adding a lot of lift to your card. So especially if your post office is a little pickier on the type of mail that you can get to go through, definitely recommend these 1x3 strips. And I love that they take up a lot of room on the back, so we don't have any saggy middles when we use foam strips or foam tape only in the corners or around the outsides. When it goes through the mail, it tends to sag and press down in the middle. And so that's another reason why I just love using these 1x3 foam strips. So there you have it, 2 super cute and quick cards, and I hope you're feeling inspired to create on World Card Making Day. Thanks so much for joining me. Feel free to ask your questions in the comments, and I would love to chat with you. Happy World Card Making Day from Tailored Expressions.